and it is 10 o'clock. So, hi, this is the Filk-Friendly Fandoms panel, and it is aimed mainly at filkers, specifically filk songwriters, who may want to be, um, who may want to reach out to new fandoms, for example. Okay, I am doing this in part because I am the guest of honor at LostCon, and they have asked me for ideas for panels. So you guys are my test run on this one. Okay. And what I want to find out too, though, is we all know that Filk is aging, right? Although we have a few very notable younger people in Filk, mainly we are in our 50s and over, right? A lot of us, there's not a lot of younger folks. So reaching out to people in various fandoms and saying, "Hey, there's music about your fandom. Come and join us," right? Well, the problem is that Star Trek, the original series, isn't really a fandom that they're listening to anymore or watching anymore. We may love Babylon 5, but most 20-year-olds don't really know about Babylon 5, right? And so my ideas for this panel were twofold. First, what makes a fandom easy to write Filk about or hard to write Filk about? And then also, as a tag question, how do we bring new people from other fandoms into Filk using Filk? Which fandoms do you think would be easiest to snag people into Filk from if we started writing Filk about their fandoms? And so, having said that, I'm gonna ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves after I do. I'm Griff the Filker. I've been in Filk 3-something years now, but I've been a musician all my life, and I find Filk fascinating, and I find the Filk community fascinating, and so that's why I'm doing this. So I'll just call on people. So Gabrielle, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Gabrielle Gold. I have been doing Filk since I was in high school, which is a while ago. I write a lot of... Interestingly enough, I haven't written a lot of the songs about fandoms, but the few that I have are a little eclectic.
Batya, please.
Hi, I'm Batya Wittenberg, formerly Batya Levine, frequently known as Batya the Toon. I have been in Filk qua Filk since I was about 19, which was in a previous century. And I've been writing or attempting to write song parodies since I knew that was possible, which was when I was about 5, I think. Because my father has done this all his life, and all of mine as well. I don't know if what I'm looking forward to doing on this panel is I don't know if there is such a thing as a trait that makes a fandom particularly suited for Filk. I want to find out. So that's where I am.
All right, Gary.
Sure. Yep. I'm Gary Ehrlich. I am from Maryland. Doing a quick skim of the participant list. I think I have been. I think most of the people on the channel have been on the planet longer than I've been in Filk. But I joined the Filk community in 1991. I was for about 20 years up until about 3 months ago. I was running the music track at Balticon until family reasons forced me to step down. Yep.
And Sunnie.
Can you hear me okay?
You can.
Excellent. I fixed my sound issues. Hi, I am Sunnie Larsen. I am a violinist and vocalist from the Seattle area. I've been in Filk. I guess I can count. I've been in Filk from when I started playing with Vixie and Tony, which was 19 years ago. So, a while. I am mostly an instrumentalist and happy to harmonize, back up anybody, but I also love to sing and would, do more of that when the opportunity presents itself.
So I think we've established that I am, among all of us, the youngest Filker here. I'm this many. Okay. And all y'all are talking about, 15, 20, 30 years in Filk. So I'm feeling a little intimidated now, but that's all right. Okay, so I've got just a few questions, and what I'm going to do is offer the questions one at a time, and we'll, go around. I'm not going to call on people, just as the spirit moves you, respond. And I will answer my own question once or twice. And so the first question for everybody is, what do you think are the easiest fandoms to write Filk about, and why? And for me, it's going to be a fandom that I'm familiar with. So if I'm already embedded deep in that fandom, like for me, and Batya knows this, Stephen King is my fandom, right? I have written 39 songs about Stephen King topics at this point. That's enough for 2 full albums plus maybe an EP or so, right? And because I am so familiar with the fandom, it makes it easy for me to write about. But when it comes to fandoms that I'm not familiar with, I would say that for me, the easiest fandoms to write Filk about are fandoms that a lot of other people are familiar with. So like Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, these are fairly, gimme fandoms for writing Filk. So I'm opening the question to the room. The easiest fandom to write, or the easiest fandoms to write Filk about, and why?
I would say anything that a lot of people are familiar with is a good bet to start with. Mm-hmm. But obviously we don't need to, confine ourselves to TV and movies. Mm-hmm. I know at least one Filker who's written a Stardew Valley Filk about the video game. So I think, video games that are really popular, Animal Crossing, you could totally do a Filk. Anything that, I think your point to something that a lot of people are familiar with, Griff, is a really good one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the thinking this over the week and trying to think of what makes particular fandoms open to it. The one thing that kept coming back to in my mind was to suggest the more a particular source of media, whether it is TV show, whether it is a series of movies, whether it is a series of books, I think the more that it covers, that media covers a wide variety of topics, wide variety of subject, wide variety of philosophies, to give you something to glom onto. I think the easier it is, right? And that's why a lot of the traditionally a lot of Filk has come out of Star Wars, Star Trek, X-Files, Doctor Who, Lois McMaster Bujold, right? When you've got a 20-book series out there, there's a lot of material that can be mined.
I
want to
say,
because
something to that. Sorry, Griff, you go ahead.
No, just a quick moderation thing. I've seen several people raise their hands. Please don't. Please put your questions in the chat, or hold them until the Q&A, which I hope will start at about 10:45. That's what we're aiming for. Okay. So yes, but this thing about, if there's a lot, it was Ben Newman said in the chat, there's a difference between a fandom that's easy to write one song about, yeah, and a fandom that's easy to write many songs about, right?
Exactly.
Like, I ran into this when I was putting together my Star Wars album. I'm like, what the hell is funny about Star Wars? Because I've been told, don't put out an album that's all Oath songs. I get it, but it's kind of hard to find funny situations in Star Wars.
No, it's
right.
Not.
Well, it was for
so
me
much.
at the time. It was for me at the time. I mean, I found several cents, but it was like, that was like pulling for me. Like, how do I get to the humor of this show when I've never seen anything apart from C-3PO that's humorous? And don't talk to me about Jar Jar Binks. Okay, moving on. Let's see. I think we have heard from Sunnie on this topic. Yes, have we heard from Gabrielle?
Not yet.
Let's have Gabrielle.
So I was thinking about this a little bit also, since I knew we were talking about this, and what makes something easy to write about when it's because as I said, I don't actually write that many songs about fandom. So when I do, they tend to be ones where there was a particular character that spoke to me more than as more of a general rule than like what kind of fandom it is, if that makes any sense. So like I have one song that I wrote about a character in a book series, but I've never written any other things about that book series. I have one song that I wrote about a character in an anime, and anime doesn't come up that much in Filk, but I have my suspicions as to why, but that one in particular was an anime about a character who was very bookish. So it kind of like made sense.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think
So-
Gary had. I'm leaning toward what Gary said about breadth of the subject matter, making it easier, because the more there is in the fandom, the likelier it is to contain something that will hit you and say, "Oh, you as the songwriter," and say, "Oh, that is a thing I could write a song about." The more that is there, the more songwriters are likely to find something in it that says, "That's something I want to write about."
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And then the other kind of related thought that came to my mind, it's along those same lines, is the extent to which the songs that we write in particular fandoms, write about particular shows, about particular series of books, right? It's in for some of us, for some of the songs we've written, right, it's just a musical version of fanfic. So it's again those properties, those series that just like a lot of fanfic, right, sometimes, right, often fills in the. I'm not a fanfic writer, so feel free to call me on my BS, but my perception, right, a lot of fanfic is filling in the gaps, right? Sometimes it's filling in the character backstories. It's
Answering a question that wasn't answered in the books or the movies.
Right, and so Filk. So Filk songs can do the same thing. I was thinking, let's say Uklamax Tiberius Rising, kind of filling in Kirk as a young boy. I think Andy Eigels regrets about Londo Mollari and what it means to be Centauri. There's a lot of
Well,
Out of
Margaret Middleton also
curiosity-
just offered this in the
Sorry.
chat. Sorry about that. I'm just making
Go
sure
ahead.
that the chat. Margaret Middleton just offered this in the chat, that a fandom that is easy to write about is a fandom whose creator encourages folk writers.
very true.
That Gordon R. Dixon apparently really enjoyed hearing new folk songs, and MZB did not. So
And Lois Bujold
Yes.
does, from what I have heard.
she does, which
Yes.
is good because I've written a recent Lois Bujold fanfic, and it was Andrew Ross's fault, and so yeah.
Out of
Yeah.
curiosity, how many of us on the panel do also write fanfic?
And the thing
2
about
out of
fanfic,
5.
is, and notice it's the two Star Trek or the two Stephen King fans on the. So maybe there's something to do that. Uncle Steve is influencing us, but anyway. But the thing is that one of the things about fanfic, yes, is that we want to explore, say, a character's backstory. Gary, there was a conversation on Andor saying, well, I want to know about Lonnie, who is a fairly important spy in the movie or in the TV show Andor, and they're like, I want his backstory. I want to know everything about him. I want to know why he became a spy for the Resistance. And I'm sure that there is fanfic out there. But looking at that, it's also, I could write a song about that, couldn't I? I could do that, right? So okay, so I think we've also covered what is the hardest fandom to write folk about. So we don't need to cover that question because I want to make sure that we get adequate time for Q&A. So I'll just go to my third question, which is, what is a fandom you've never written filk about but wanted to? And what's in the way? Like, wow, I would love to write a filk, a filk about that, but, and what gets in your way? What is like making you not able to do it? Yeah, Batya.
I have a very short and very funny answer, which is that this past week, I noticed that the names in the chorus of Seanan McGuire's Wicked Girls, I'm guessing that probably at least a good few of the people in the audience know that song. The names in the chorus of Wicked Girls scan exactly to the names of the main cast of the Amazing Digital Circus. Ragatha, Kinger, and Pomni, and Jax, Gangle, and Zooble. I have no idea where to go with that. And part of what is standing in my way is I have not yet seen the finale. So that is an extremely silly reason to want to write a fic. I noticed that the name scansion matches. And a very silly and eventually easily surmountable barrier. But sometimes it really is that simple.
Okay. Others? Fandom you ever written Filk about but you wanted to, and what's in the way?
Yeah, so for me, honestly, if it's something that I am familiar with, but there's been a lot of Filk written about it already, sometimes I struggle to come up with ideas. Like, I can't, I'd have to go back and rewatch the thing or reread the thing again a million times before noticing something. And sometimes for me it's easier to actually write Filk about things that don't have a lot of Filk written about them already. Because, you know, there's a lot of material to cover, and you don't have to get quite as deep into it, I guess, if you know what I'm saying, to be able to find something interesting.
And going back to what we talked about earlier, for me, I get intimidated when it's a fandom that's been around for a while. Like Star Wars, took me a while to write the song for that album, because I kept thinking, oh, people have already heard this. It's already been done. I'm just going to bore people. And then I heard the Faithful Sidekicks, Han Solo for President, and I'm like, you know what? There are avenues to write new songs about this fandom. It is possible to do that. Sunnie and Batya. Or Sunnie and Gary, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Gary.
They're... I can name a couple. I can think of a couple that I think, have aspects that would lend themselves into some of the kind of songwriting I do, and that I've enjoyed. Right, so I enjoyed both the books and both the book series and the TV show for The Expanse. Seems like there's some things that would be a natural, especially right as many space stations, cities, and constructs as there are in
So much material.
In The Expanse, you think I'd have glommed onto something, also these days, I've only read the I've only read the books and novellas, not the TV show, because we don't have Apple TV in this house. We haven't subscribed to Apple TV, and I'm still one or two. I feel like I should have a Murderbot song somewhere in there. Why I haven't? Well, I could say it has nothing to do with any. I could say it has nothing to do with any particular fandom, goes to all the reasons that my songwriting of any sort has declined precipitously over the past decade or so, and with a few exceptions has virtually disappeared since the pandemic. But there's a lot of it. There's just time to write, time to think about writing. Yeah.
Sunnie, how about you?
I feel like I have a couple of ideas percolating in my brain about Discworld. I'm currently on a reread of the Discworld novels. I'm on Nightwatch, I think. I've started at the beginning, so I'm well into it and just loving it every bit as much as I did the first time. And I have one that is about 70% finished about Ghostbusters 2016, because Holtzman is my girl. It's almost there. But the thing that's stopping me is that I don't feel like I write lyrics. Usually I have help. I struggle really, really hard with words. So coming up with anything at all is really difficult for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels this is a massive writer's block there. So anything I get out, it feels like a struggle. But I have the ideas. They just need to figure out how to come out.
So we've had several comments in the chat that I want to share. George said that he feels that something that helps a fandom get heavily filked is if lyric music is significant to canon, like the teaching ballads on Pern, or Valdemar. Although of course the central author of Valdemar being a filker is probably helpful, and see also Cherry, right? And then someone, Seamus, commented on how that it's scanning well, is a good reason to write the song. This line that came up like last night in the circle. I want to say it was the Caplors performed a song about there's 780 or 174 slides left of this
pointless. Bill Owenhart was pointless.
And I'm like, and now I have to write a song about this. This meeting could have been an email, and someone suggested a song I didn't know that it scanned to, and I said, well, actually, this meeting could have been an email. It scans perfectly to Grandma got run over by a reindeer, so now I have to write that song. Why? Because it scanned well.
Because it scans.
Because it scans. It's the only reason, right? And then we have also George offers the idea that the filking spirit in younger people and younger fandoms has gotten redirected into vidding, which is possible, yes. And then Lem asks a bunch of questions. Like, are there fandoms with their own independent music outside of Filk? And that maybe we need to let those fandoms know that we exist. Come and be with us, right? Okay, and so that I think we're making really good time. So I think this one is now the question we need to really dig into. How do we bring in new people from other fandoms using Filk? Which fandoms do you think would be easier or more Filk-friendly? How would it be possible? And we've talked about how being familiar with a fandom helps, being immersed in the fandom helps, that these are things that grab us. That it's like, well, if I love Star Wars anyway, obviously it's going to be easier for me to write fanfic or write Filk about it, musical fanfic. I like that idea that Filk is musical fanfic. And I know I've heard that from someone else, like early in my filking career, but I don't remember who it was, and I'm terrible with names. So maybe it'll come to me in a flash of blinding light. We have somebody pointing out that the Joko cruise is not quite Filk, but definitely Filk adjacent. And so that's another place that we might be able to find, not steal, but include. Expand beyond the Joko cruise. Talk about Filk while we're on the cruise if we are lucky enough to go on it. Right. So then my question again is, how do we bring people in? Well, actually, okay, so Alex Wittenberg, who I assume is related to Batya in some way, shape, or form.
He's in the room right over there right
yes, now. Just asked me as a relative newbie, how did I get into Filk? Well, so there's this guy named Blind Lemming Chiffon, and I started taking guitar lessons with him, and then he asked me to come to this very convention, and I watched and felt like an idiot, and all these amazing, talented people, and I would never be one of them. And then I found out about FOM, and then Gabrielle Gold found me on FOM and said, do you know what Filk is? And I'm all, yes. And she's like, do you know what OVFF is? And I'm all, yes. And she's all, could you give us a concert at OVFF? And I said, because at that point I think I had, 4 songs written that were Filk adjacent songs. And so then I spent the entire summer frantically writing what I thought of as Filk music so that I would have something to bring to OVFF. So the two people who are most responsible for that are in this room. And as I said before the panel started, I am placing blame and or giving credit where blame and credit are due. So that's how I got into Filk. And yes, absolutely, Alex says, so clearly we need to make sure everybody takes lessons from Lem. I'm good with that. Brett says he has filked Joko on his own cruise. Wow, that's brave.
Yeah.
How did he react? Let us know. Let us know in the chat, Brett, because that's amazing. So
okay. I'm gonna
panel,
tell
though,
you.
Yeah,
Can you hear
tell
me?
us. Yeah, tell us.
Yes, yes. He was very amused, and a couple of people said they thought the Filk was better than the original.
Ooh, and he was
Yes.
still amused. That's fortunate. I remember hearing from someone um, that they were fairly new to Filk, and they were in a circle, and they had Filked March. Was it March of Cambrith? I think.
March of Cambrith.
And then they looked up, and AJ Adams was standing there looking at them, and they're like, and AJ's all, keep going.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to hear this. So, okay, so again, so how do we bring in new people? What are some ways that you would or have brought in new fandoms and new people into Filk?
Right. Well, I guess the first question, right? There's two aspects to it, right? How do we expose, right? How do we expose Filkers to their music, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's how do we fully bring them into the community, right? Because they're I mean, they're two different aspects. I mean, you get things like, you get like Randy Hoffman inviting, a variety of, steampunk, wizard rock, whatever, funny comedy to Confluence, you've got, Eric will play, you've got Eric and Lizzie and Filkcast will play, almost anything even vaguely Filk adjacent. So I mean, is there, we can definitely, there's definitely people exposing. The question is, right, how do you find the people who can, I guess the question is really, how do you find the people who can make the jump from just being a performer of music to actually, the people who will really glom onto glom onto Filk as a community?
Yeah, that is one thing that, and Gabrielle, I see you'll go next. That is one thing as a relative noob, and I've written several songs about it. I performed one at Circle on Friday night called Family of Friends. It was like, I never knew this community existed. And suddenly I've got this family of friends. I've got people who give a damn, right? And I guess the other question that, as long as this is saying this, how do we institute a Filk track at a Gen Con? Like, LostCon is a Gen Con, but there are people trying to make it have a Filk track, at least, where you expect that there will be Filk at LostCon. And that's one of the things they're asking me for suggestions about. So again, hi, this panel is me gathering data, but Gabrielle, you had stuff to say. Let's have it.
Yeah, so I'm coming at this from a slightly different angle than everyone else seems to be, which is that there's the angle of looking for musicians who are into sort of geeky topics and seeing if they would be interested in Filk, and then there's the angle of looking for people who are already into very geeky topics, who aren't musicians, but who may very well be interested in the community. And I've found that a lot of, and when I say aren't musicians, I mean like aren't professional musicians. It could be anyone, anywhere from someone who feels like they can't sing to someone who is, a budding guitarist or something like that. But regardless, my experience with this, I actually, the reason why I wasn't here, where I wasn't at the festival at all yesterday, was because I had an in-person local Filk circle that I set up with largely people who are friends of mine, a couple people who've been in Filk for a little longer, but most of them were people who were pretty new and started coming to OVFF because I coaxed them because they're already very geeky. And I feel like that's a population that isn't being reached out to as much. People who aren't already interested in music. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does.
As people who...
It does, because, and you brought up something that from my own experience was, when you asked me, would you give a concert at OVFF, and here I am with 5 songs I've written, and only, I think, 2 of them were Filk, and I'm all, sure, maybe, I don't know. I felt very intimidated, too, because in my head, at that time, Filkers all sang songs that they had written themselves. And you didn't sing other people's songs, that was a no. And so, I still get a little, like, I've filked a couple of other Filkers songs, like Lucy on the Line. I've written a song to that tune. I feel the need to ask Tim Griffin for permission. And I've been told by people he won't care, and I'm like, well, I need to know that, right? That's just my own hang up. And so, there may be people who are, intimidated just by the idea of singing. And then there may be people who are intimidated by the idea of, well, I don't have any songs of my own, so I can't be a Filker, right? That was where I really was until Lem and Gabrielle beat it out of my head, but it took them a while.
Can I interrupt for 2 seconds?
Yeah, no, of course.
To bring it back to the fandom question, part of the reason why I bring that up is because one of my friends was so excited to not only hear other people sing, but to just play a track from a video game for us that we hadn't heard.
Mm-hmm.
They were very excited to just share music that they enjoyed from a geeky source. And I feel like that's something that can be tapped into somehow. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how, but as Sunnie was saying, there are so many sources that could inspire Filk that aren't quote-unquote traditional Filk sources.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also, sorry, you're not done. Go on.
No, that was my main point. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump off of that by saying that, again, I think a lot of people who like geeky stuff and people who like music, either performing it themselves or listening to other people's, aren't super familiar with the folk tradition wherein it is understood that most of what people are singing and playing isn't stuff they wrote themselves. Mm-hmm. Like, it was pretty basic in the height of the folk as I don't want to say movement necessarily, but as a musical sharing tradition, that it was out of the ordinary to be sitting in a folk circle and sing something that you had written yourself. You were going to be singing, more likely. You might have arranged it. You might have put together the harmony. You might have adjusted the words a little bit to your taste, but you probably hadn't composed it yourself for the most part. And when I first came into Filk, I hadn't had a lot of personal experience with folk, but I'd listened to folk albums, and I knew most of my favorite folk singers were mostly not doing their own stuff. They were doing old traditionals. They were doing covers. And so when I first, at the tender age of 19, stepped into a Filk circle, I did not have the expectation that I hear you Griffs talk about, that you gotta perform stuff you wrote. I did have some stuff I'd written. Most of it was pretty bad, but I wasn't there going, I need to step in here and showcase my songwriting skills. I was there to sing with other people and to hear what other people were singing, and I had such a great time. And I feel like... I'm sorry, I just saw in the chat Margaret saying, Juanita calls that the great folk scare.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful.
I've heard that.
I would like to bring that back.
Yeah.
Let's make folk scary again.
Yeah, and I wonder, just thinking about it, are we, have we in modern culture, moved further and further away from the, gathering around the piano, in your own home, or making music with the family in your own home, singing with your family in your own home, or the early days of Filk, hanging around the piano in the hotel lobby, banging out the standards of the day, right? That really birthed a lot of it's really where the folk tradition came out of, and it's that relation to the folk tradition. It's like these days if you want to share music with your family, even some of your friends, it's like hey, look at this cool TikTok.
And Sunnie.
I mean, it's kind of basic, but if you're a performer performing out in a space that's outside of a con, or outside of a strictly Filk con, the example that I can think of where I found somebody who has then emerged into the Filk world was at Geek Girl Con, which is just a generalist con in Seattle. And I was on a panel about nerd music, not Filk music, but about nerd music with like the Double Clicks and Jessica from the PDX Broadsides. And we were talking about, writing songs about fandom. And after the panel, somebody came up to me and said, I didn't know that there was this community, that they were out there. And that person was at NorwestCon this past April and sang a very, very funny song that was acclaimed very widely in the room, and has gone to other Filk cons that are not in Seattle since that time. And it makes me very, very happy to see them every time I see them show up at a convention. Like, this was somebody that didn't know about us, mm-hmm. and then got a chance to learn and has participated in the community. So, just getting your music out there, mm-hmm. songs about fandom. I feel like people will come up to you and say, like, hey, I write songs like this, but I didn't know anybody else did. Where can I be with other people that do this?
Mm-hmm. So. And I think that to some extent the proliferation of, and I mean, this is one of the things that made it possible for me to be more involved in Filk, is this con, mm-hmm. right here where we are now, and at least one online circle that meets, 2 or 3 online circles that meet regularly that I try my best to show up for. It's like, if there was no online circles, I would be going to 2 or 3 cons a year, maybe, if that, and I wouldn't have this like deeper connection with the community. So I think that that's a good point, is that, find the people who are, or find a way to advertise. I hate that word, but to make it raise awareness. If you are a musician, if you like to sing, if you like to perform, if you have been writing music, there's space for you. There's a landing pad. Come land with us, be with us. And I wanted to address one thing that was said in the chat about how LostCon has always had a Filk track. Yes, it has, but they want to make it a bigger thing, where it's not just Filk is confined to one room. Which is what happens at a lot of Gen Cons. I've noticed that the Filk is all happening in room 237, and that's it. And there's nothing out in the con to make Filk more of a part of the con. It's more like we're added on.
Right,
what? Yeah, and that's an improvement.
Filk used to be confined to the stairwells.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. But it's like, can we get it where we can have a couple different function rooms? Maybe have the main stage. Could we have concerts on the main stage instead of in a room out in the back of the hotel? This is like making it bigger, right? I mean, and yes, at LostCon, my first LostCon, which was 2 years ago, Nick Smith asked me to give a concert. The only other people giving a concert, not to make me intimidated or anything, were Tim Griffin and Kathy Marr. So, hi, yeah, just, give a concert. While there, it was like, it kind of felt like, okay, so we're also having a couple of big-name filters. We're having David Bowie and Whitney Houston, and you can just be over here in the corner, and that's what it felt like, And, Batya, I need a translation because I don't read Hebrew as much as I should.
Yes, I was expecting to give one.
So
Emily Lewis said in the chat about at Balticon there was a panel called Expanding the Circle. Someone said, we hate this word, but we need to evangelize. And I and then I said, no, we need to do kiruv, which is a Hebrew word that literally means bringing closer.
Yeah.
And closening, if that were a word in English.
I like that word.
Yeah.
Using closening. I'm going to write a song called Closening now. But
Griff, to make you feel a little better, a little bit of the we were all there. So I said I really got into Filk in 1991. So in 1993, heading into Worldcon that year, Con Francisco, really on the basis of I think one Star Trek song and one other song, I forget what it was now, that I had posted to Rec Music Filk along the way. Lee Gold decided to put me in a song a Songs of Star Trek song circle and a Songs of Other Media song circle, along with Musical Chairs, Kathy Marr, Leslie Fish, Joey Shoji. and this is even before I played guitar. This is when I was this is when I was strictly Acapulco. So I've very much had the what the cuckoo am I doing up here?
Right. Yeah, and so for me it was
moments.
like knowing that, and then I got to sit with Kathy Moore, and it turned out she's such a lovely woman,
Yes.
and she gave me. Now I don't use a pick when I play because I have arthritis, and what happens when you have arthritis in a pick is you squeeze the pick and it goes blink, and then it ends up inside the guitar, which is not, an effective place. But
Yes.
she gave me one of
Yes.
her thumb. She gave me one of her thumb picks. I treasure that thing.
Mhm,
I
right.
have it stored. Like I want to put it in glass. This is Kathy Marr's thumb pick, But it felt like I am passing a torch to
yeah.
you, not the torch, but I'm passing a
Mhm.
torch to you. I have judged you,
Yes.
good enough, right? And
Mhm.
those of us, a
Yes.
lot of us are
Yes.
struggling. We struggle with the whole being good enough, right?
Mhm,
Uh,
yeah. Oh, and also the and also the worrying if a Filker is going to kill you, because one of the songs that got me famous was my Gene Roddenberry's "Ghost is Haunting Space Station 9," and so I said, I'm going to be in a con with Leslie Fish. Should I try and ask Leslie to back me up on this? Was Leslie going to kill me because her reputation preceded me at this point? And I was assured. I was assured by several people that as long as you weren't parroting "Banned from Argo," Leslie Fish's position on people parroting her work is make sure I get a copy. And I did ask her, and she was very very courteous, very nice and
the whole
courteous,
thing
and played
too,
it for me.
So, and I was going to have a Q&A, but we've had so many people putting great
Right.
questions and comments in the chat that I think I'm just going to keep on going with us as a panel and
Maybe
let
now
people
is
keep
a
on.
good
Okay.
time.
Right.
If anyone's
Yeah.
been saving questions, put them in
Yeah.
the chat now.
Yeah, if you've saved
Yeah.
any questions, please stick them in the chat so that we can answer them. Because
Right.
these have been more been comments, and I would like to
Right,
see
right.
questions for the panel. So we'll keep on chatting while you
Right.
give you your questions. So,
Right. Actually, I did want to get back. I do want to get back to what you were talking about how you, how within the bounds of trying to build a track, do you, how in the bounds of trying to build a track, do you get Filk more noticed by more people, and get it out there? One thing is, if you have the people who can pull it off from both sides, both from the performers and from the other people, there are a number of ideas. There are a number of crossover program ideas that have been circulating for some time. Judith Heyman, way back at Anticipation in 2009, came up with two ideas. One was story and song. One was science and song. And in story and song, she pulled together, she found 5 authors who had works that Filkers had written songs on. In some cases, they already were aware of the song. In some cases, they were not aware of the song yet, and they had the author read a short passage, and then the performer sing a song, sing the song related to that. To that work. Same thing for science. They had a bunch of scientists, and each one in turn came up and gave a really brief 3-minute talk about some scientific principle or some star they looked at in a telescope, whatever like that, and then had a Filker sing a song about that. And so of course that's use the authors and their fans and the scientists and their fans as the hook to bring people into a Filk event. Another thing that's worked well a couple times at Balticon is having song circles that appeal to more than just the core Filk. The core Filk crowd. I mean, we had a Tom Lehrer song circle this year for obvious reasons that drew well. One of the most successful ones I think we ever had. We had a Pete Seeger song circle. I think the year after he died. That drew a huge number of people. Several who I recognized are just are not Filkers. Not even people I thought were musicians. They're just a couple of authors that I recognized joined that one.
So I've seen a couple of suggestions in the chat. Natalie Rogers says Spokon did a sing and draw where the guest artist drew something and the guest musician created a song, and then they flipped. The guest musician sang a song and the guest artist illustrated it. Great way to get into main programming. Oh, I'm going to suggest that for LostCon. Thank you very much, Natalie. That's a great idea. And then we also had a comment, or we had a question for the panel, and I got to scroll back because there's a lot of comments here. Let's see, it's hiding in there somewhere. But the question was something along the lines of, is there a current or a new show?
Alex, it's right here. Does anyone else have a recent show, movie, book they have been thinking about doing Filk for? And he says anyone else because he's heard all of mine.
Right. So, recent shows, movies, books that you want to write Filk for. And Batya, he may have heard them all, but I still want to hear yours too. So, let's just go around the room.
I'll go
around
last.
the panel. Okay, well, then I'll start. I have been wanting to write, and for me, it's a new song, a new show, even though it was apparently it was 10 years ago. But for me, there has been no new year since 2000. We're still in the 2000s. It may be 2026, but it's still the year 2000 in my head. But I recently discovered, Joe and I recently discovered The Good Place. Yeah, Project Hail Mary. Project Hail Mary it needs songs, okay? And I need to watch it a couple more times to really get, you want to do a rewatch to catch the other bits, Well, but Rebecca, the thing is, if you do your Kit Rocha Filks, then you'll make other people in Filk familiar with the books. I know that there have been, like the Murderbot, George saying, we heard Murderbot songs at Worldcon. I heard one in Circle yesterday, I think. And, this is another one that's a recent thing that, Joe's the one who usually exposes me to new media. So if there's a new show out, I'll hear about it because Joe is watching it. Because, I don't even bother with the remote control anymore. That's his job. I don't deal with that anymore. It's gotten too complicated. I am finally an old person. Yes, I am 55 years old, and now I feel ancient. But anyway. So, yeah, I think that for me, I would like to write some more in, I've written a couple songs about The Good Place. I'd like to write some more. But the thing is also there are some fandoms that have had, people who have been part of the fandom for 30, 40 years. And how do you make an inroad into that? What fandoms might be intimidating to write Filk about? For me, Star Trek Original Series, I try not to touch it. I've written one Star Trek song. It was a Red Shirt song. I feel like I checked off a box. Look, I wrote my Red Shirt song. But in terms of writing other songs about Star Trek, I'm not sure I can. It feels too intimidating. And that's the thing that really blocks me from writing Filk about a particular fandom, is if it's like I don't have enough information about that fandom, or the fandom is too expanded. How many different shows are there in the Star Trek franchise these days? Mm-hmm. I mean, you could you could make a living off of just doing DS9 songs, right? So yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt anybody, and I'm sorry if I did, but let's a current or a new show that maybe doesn't have a lot of traction yet that you want to do Filk about. Batya, tell us, because you told your dad. So now you have to tell all of us.
Oh, horrifying. So, as mentioned before, the amazing digital circus, I have exactly one idea that isn't even an idea yet. I have a half-finished Murderbot song. I have a barely started Andor song. I really, really am going to have to write something for Project Hail Mary. And because I saw it in conjunction with Project Hail Mary, largely because people have been drawing connections to it all over the place and are shipping the main characters from completely unrelated movies, Iron Lung. For anyone not familiar, Iron Lung, Project Hail Mary is about a guy who winds up alone on a spaceship way, way, way the hell out in outer space and has to save the world there. Iron Lung is about a guy who winds up on a submarine in an ocean of blood and has to save the world from there. The ship name apparently is Bloody Mary. I love fandom so much, you guys. But I really want to write something drawing the connections between those two stories, or possibly do what Ben Newman, I know you're out there, Ben, has done, of write a song that could be about either one, depending on how you want to look at it. In any case, Ben! I say I know you're out there and you're perpetrating horrible puns in the chat.
Yeah, one thing... One one universe that I can't. One thing is, I may be surprised I haven't heard more songs out of, and maybe I'm not listening hard enough, which is entirely possible. But I can't think of that many Marvel Cinematic Universe songs that I have heard. The one that pops immediately to mind is Lawrence Dean's "Do You Want to Build an Iron Man?" But I can't think
There's
of many.
The Ballad of Captain America's disapproving face, but
You're
that
right,
is as
there is.
much comics as it is MCU.
You're right. There is. And then the other, and again, maybe people just haven't gotten to it yet. But I think I've only heard or only encountered one Stranger Things song. I think maybe two.
I know of only one. It's Andrew Ross's headphones, and he did it yesterday.
Oh, okay.
And that one is.
And I've written a poem that will be a song once I get
Okay.
a tune for it.
Mhm.
And I have heard that one too. I've heard that one. So maybe there's
Yeah,
two.
there should be more.
Well, there's a second. There's a second one because there's one that there's one that Dana Katz-Buchstav and one of her offspring wrote recently.
That's right.
She put it. Yeah, she put it. It was in the songwriting thread. It was in the songwriting thread. I think I sang it. I don't know if I sang it at Balticon or sang it online somewhere. I said, "Hi, do you mind if I steal this?" Basically, I messaged her.
So can we, Sunnie and Gabrielle?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier in the chat, and it's scrolling so fast now that it's
It
gone.
is.
But
We have a great community.
to Alex's question, I mentioned the Locked Tombs books by Tamsin Muir, so Gideon the Ninth, and all of those, because that is such a full universe, and the backstory behind that, it really just goes back to that same comment of like, the more lore that you have to draw from, the more possibilities there are. And I've loved those books since Gideon. I can't wait for the next one. Also, I am strongly in favor of anybody writing Andor songs because I want to hear them. And one that has come up also on the Apple TV landscape is Widow's Bay, which has sort of been described as very Stephen King-esque, but sort
Say
of like
more right now.
sort of like
tell.
comedic Jaws, small Massachusetts island town. There's some creepy thing going on. I'm only like 3 episodes in, so I need to watch more of that. But it's been very good so far. Widow's Bay. Yeah, and then just like songs about things that you like. I have a half-built song just about how Dave Tinney used to try to keep Filkers caffeinated at 3 o'clock in the morning to the tune of Hallelujah, because everybody needs a Leonard Cohen Filk, I guess.
Well, and any Filk about coffee automatically, that appeals to 95% of all fans, right?
I just need to finish that one.
So,
Gabrielle,
please.
Yeah, so I need to get around to watching the 4th season of the anime I was talking about, because I almost never like something like an anime enough to like identify with an anime enough to want to write a song about it. But it happened, and I'm curious if it will happen again if I watch the 4th season. But it's called the anime is called Ascendance of a Bookworm.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically about it's an isekai. If you know what an isekai is, it's like someone gets pulled into another world, basically. And the thing is that if you know anything about anime, then you know that there are far too many isekai shows right now. But this one stands out to me. It's about a person, a young woman who, you find this out in the first episode, young woman who dies by having a bookcase full of books fall on her, but she was studying to be a librarian, and she wakes up in the body of a 6-year-old girl in a fantasy world. Yes. And it's entirely, it's the world building is so good in this show. and the characters are all really good too, and it's not a combination you get a lot of the time in modern isekai. I've found you find few gems. So yeah.
See, now you're making me think that I should. So my son is totally an anime freak, like, and I have difficulty watching anime because of my ears. Because high-pitched sounds for my ears are way over mine, and anime is full of them. And it's just like, I can't watch if I'm doing this half the time, But I may watch it with the captions on and the sound off. Maybe that'll help.
Subtitles, yeah.
We are 5 minutes away from the end of our panel. I think we did a great job, by the way. And thank you for being an amazing audience. Let's give applause to the audience. They did such a great job. They gave us all these great questions and ideas, and thank you very much. And, yeah. Well, Emily, maybe you should have another panel. Maybe you should run a panel. Run one at the September Festival of Living Rooms, and we'll just keep this going.
Rotate the next 5 people in.
Right, exactly. But I also want to say thank you for the ideas, because I am facing this, this job as guest of honor at LostCon. By the way, come to LostCon. And
amazing.
I hope so. I hope so. But now I have some good ideas that I can take back to the con and say, okay, what about this and this and this? Maybe we do that. I think that the art and music is an amazing idea to bring the artists in and interact with, get that crossover going. So
I do want to add one thing to the crossover thing, which I was going to at the time, but then we moved past it. I think really important, if you want to use those things to attract people to Filk, is make an announcement. If you like the sound of this sort of music, you should try coming to the open Filk tonight.
Right,
things
exactly.
Like that. Because
yeah, exactly.
the 2 crossover things I have seen, they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
By the way, Griff, thinking about building out programs, I can send this to you. I'm willing to send it to anyone, but I have a Word document I have a Word document called my Balticon master file, and it's a list of every session. It's every panel theme Filk that I've run at Balticon with a description. And I am certainly willing to share that with anybody who's running a track.
Yeah, no, please do. You have my email address?
I do.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I do. I know where to find you on DM if I need to.
It's really difficult. griffthefilker@gmail.com. I mean, I don't know. Make sure you put both F's. I don't know. I like Brett's idea too about a jukebox concert where each performer does 1 or 2 songs on the main stage. My one question about the jukebox concert would be, like, if you are, say, Jeff and Maya Bonoff, and you have electric guitars and a bass and amps that need to go up on the, what do you do? Yeah, thank you, dear. There are 3 F's. You're right, Griff the Filker. There's an F. But yeah, what do you do? I'm reminded of the comment that Robin Baylor made at my first consonance at my first con, where there was people moving. There was a band that used amps and stuff, and they were being moved off the stage. And she said, I remember when Shannon we had to do a stage change every single song, and I remember becoming a living music stand. And so my only concern about doing that kind of a jukebox thing would be, what would you do if somebody has to bring up 2 amps and a couple of electric guitars or something. But and they've been called one shots, or like what Sunnie just said, the honored listener concert. So what we need to do is, what you want to do is have more embedding of Filk in the other parts of the con, so that we can subversively turn it into a Filk con. Anyway, no, I didn't say that, did I? No, none of you heard that. We'll erase that part of the recording. No, we won't.
Everyone will look directly into the blinking red light.
Oh, Emily says that needs an evil laugh. All right, so any final thoughts from our panelists?
Come to my concert later. It's going to be great.
Yes, come to Batya's concert. Come to my concert. I'm going to be there.
It's going to be great.
I'm going to be there. I'm the last concert.
Concert.
No pressure. I'm not. I know that there are other concerts, so make sure you go to as many concerts today as you can. Come to Circle tonight. We'll have a great time. Okay. And my concert is right before Circle, so it's the last concert. So please pile into my concert and then stick around for Circle. Come to Batya's concert because you want to hear her sing. I promise you. Thank you all so much. I'm going to turn Lem back into the host because I can do that. And then I am going to step away and get some breakfast.
Thanks, everyone.
And I will see you folks later. Thank you so much for coming to this panel.